structure this afternoon. Our first presenter will be Shakuntala Longkumar. She's going to talk about anergatives and accusatives in Mongsen. Atu, you have 20 minutes for your presentation and 10 minutes after that for questions from the audience. And Janisa will notify you about the time left that you have on your presentation. We'll give you messages in the chat room.
Okay.
Any questions before you start?
Not really. Yeah.
Welcome, and we are ready for you.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. I would also like to thank all the organizers who have taken the pain of organizing the conference and making it a success. It's actually 2 a.m. here in the morning.
Oh, so good morning.
So if I'm a little groggy and if I fumble and, kindly excuse me. So shall I start the presentation?
Sure, we are ready for you.
Yeah. So basically this paper, the paper is titled Anergatives and Non-Accusatives in Mongsen. So it's a very sort of a preliminary work, a preliminary stage right now. But anyway, the paper sort of investigates the anergatives and unaccusatives in Mongsen, which is a Tibeto-Burman language spoken in the state of Nagaland in the northeastern region of India. So the language is listed as vulnerable in the Atlas World's Languages in Danger. And the language also does not have any written literature in that sense. And it's also not used for any official purposes. And neither is it taught in schools. So anyway, so I'll go ahead with the presentation. So basically the motivation for am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Right. So basically the motivation for this paper was, ergative languages have received a lot of immense attention over the past few decades. But this area of split intransitives in ergative languages have been comparatively less explored, especially the Tibeto-Burman languages that are spoken in the northeastern part of India, which sort of host a significant variety of languages. Actually, like the northeastern region of India has a lot of languages where the speakers are small, but a large number of languages. So basically, the main objectives, as you can see in the screen.
Now we lost you, I think.
Sorry about that. I'm going to turn the sound off so you don't hear the dinging of the people entering. So please continue. Go right ahead.
So basically, the main objectives are, to understand the syntactic and semantic alignment of Mongsen intransitive verbs, to see if Mongsen sort of adheres to the unaccusative and unergative distinction of the intransitives. Also see if diagnostic tests used for other languages to capture this distinction or this dichotomy can be applied to Mongsen, and also analyze the nature of case marking employed in the intransitive constructions. So those are basically the main objectives. Paul Mutter's 1978 categorization of unaccusatives and unergatives, which supposedly hold across all languages, is used to investigate the Mongsen intransitive verbs. So, we know that intransitive verbs do not belong to a homogeneous class. They are identified as belonging to two different categories, namely the unaccusatives and the unergatives. So they require only one argument, and the basic difference between the unergatives and the unaccusatives lies in the theta role that is assigned to the argument, the sole argument. So unergative verbs that unergatives are verbs that require an agent argument, whereas unaccusatives are verbs that require a theme argument. So you can see the examples here, like unergatives are examples like sing, jump, smile. And unaccusative verbs are examples like melt. So and unaccusative verbs are examples like melt, sink, fall, etc. So usually unergatives take agent argument, and also mostly are plus animate, whereas unaccusative verbs would be mostly minus animate, mostly, not always, but most of the time. So examples like Emily sang, which is unergative, and Emily sang a song. Now here, the thing is, Emily here is sort of related to the subject of a transitive, whereas in the second unaccusatives, where you have the ice cream melted, the unaccusative subject is related to the object of the transitive verb. So now so this unergative and the unaccusative verbs were first coined in relational grammar by Perlmutter 1978, who noticed that the verbs which take a single argument were not a homogeneous class and rather fit into two separate categories. One which takes an argument, like the subject of a two-place argument, namely the unergative, and the other which takes argument like that of the object of a transitive clause labeled as the unaccusative. So this was largely the essence of the unaccusative hypothesis. So this was later introduced by Bouzio in 1986 within the government and binding framework. So according to Bouzio, unaccusatives, which he calls ergative verbs, do not assign a case as a result of which the subject which originates in the object position in the D structure have to move to the subject position to receive case. So he noted that there seems to be a correlation between the verbs having theta roles for the subject on one hand, and being able to assign case to the object on the other hand. So his observation is standardly referred to as the Bouzio's generalization. So apart from that, like there were subsequent works, a lot of work had been done on the intransitives, like Van Valen, and also like Levin and Rappaport, 1995. So basically here is like a structural difference that you would see between the unergatives and the unaccusatives. So so basically like, yeah, in generative grammar, it's presumed that the agent sort of merges in the small VP, in the spec of the small VP, whereas the unaccusative subject sort of merges in the complement position of the VP. So in that sense, unaccusative constructions are also assumed to be like that of a passive construction, as in like it originates in the object position and then moves to the subject position, and hence the unaccusative subjects are are also known as derived subjects. So basically for this study, I have tried to look at the intransitives based on this unaccusative hypothesis, or like the distinction that was laid down by Perlmutter. So he states that he maintains that unergativity and unaccusativity can be predicted from the semantics of the sentence, and the predicates carrying similar meaning across languages should behave similarly in determining unergativity or unaccusativity. So I have listed his categorization of the unergative and the unaccusative predicates and its equivalent meanings in Mommsen to examine if Mommsen predicates adheres to this generalization. So I have only used verbs for which there is an equivalent meaning in the language. So yeah, these are the unergative clauses. So he has classified them as, verbs which describes volitional acts, which would also sort of take mostly animate subjects. So there are this other category of, speaking verbs, or like sounds made by animals, or involuntary acts or bodily processes, like these examples. So I have taken the exact, or like, equivalent meanings for this in Mommsen to analyze whether this distinction holds for Mommsen. So the unaccusative category is like a really big, large strata, as you can see. So there is, so basically he has classified them under, he has classified the verbs that would semantically take a patient under this category. So this category also constitutes the class of inchoatives, and also like, verbs, happening verbs, existing verbs, predicates of non-voluntary emissions, aspectual predicates, duratives, etc., etc. So these are basically his distinction of unergatives and unaccusatives. So now Mommsen is a ergative language. So in the intransitives, usually you see like it is marked absolutive, which is 0 marked. So it would have an unmarked. It would be unmarked in the intransitives. But usually what happens is in most of these languages, most of the ergative languages, you would see that unergatives may allow for ergative case because the subject of the unergative is related to the subject of a transitive verb. So I'll go to the observations that I've seen from the classification. So all the verbs that were listed in the unergative verbs can take an ergative case and also can host cognitive objects. So action verbs involving volitional acts, speaking verbs, and bodily processes. Like as you can see in the default case, as you can see in example 1, I am quarreling. You usually don't have a ergative case because it's intransitive. But usually in the unergatives, one would allow for an ergative case, but it would sort of result in I mean, it would mean habitual. It would sort of give a habitual reading. Or for instance, in example 3, you would see like, children play, taking an ergative case marker. And it would also sort of give a generic reading, like, as in like kind of a reading. And also you can have like, you can insert adverb, and you can have something like, I vomited deliberately, like for instance, example 4. So there also you can see some sort of ergative case occurring. So usually so from what I've seen, like usually the unergatives sort of allow for an ergative case in Mongsen. So there are some exceptions like this verb, like, knock, hammer, cheat. So these are basically verbs that he has classified under the unergatives. So you see, like, this verb seems to have 2 categories. Like if you have a sentence, I know, ni ku, which would mean like I got knocked without the ergative. And if you have the ergative, it would mean something like I knocked, as in I am the agent here. So so basically what happens is like this kind of verbs seem to have like a agent as well as a theme counterpart. So now so also largely like in unergatives would take like it would take plus animate subjects. So now coming to the unaccusatives part, so usually like ergative languages, unergative verbs would usually allow for the ergative subject, right? So now here coming to the unaccusatives, what happens is even in unaccusatives, it seems to sometimes in some constructions one would see the ergative case, which is a little unusual because usually you wouldn't see ergative case in unaccusative constructions. So these are verbs which usually takes inanimate subjects, and as is expected from an unaccusative verb, they mostly take the theme or patient arguments. So although few verbs in this category can take an animate subject with an ergative marker, as you can see, I slipped, I deliberately slipped. I can actually have the ergative case, and it would indicate volition or doing something deliberately. So, so even in this category, even in the unaccusative category, like we saw in the ergatives, there are a set of verbs like the verb burn, float, hang, shake, dry, blow, etc., etc., which would sort of, which seems to have, which sort of gets, which can be used as a patient. The subject can be used as a patient, or the subject can be used as an agent. So for instance, if I say like I got burned, I would be the patient in the subject. I would be the patient here. And in the other construction, I burned, where it would be, I would be the agent. So there are a lot of examples like, with the verb dry or with the verb break. Like, I got dried, as in like I am the patient here, and I dried where I am the agent here. And similarly, even with break, if there is no ergative, it would mean I am the patient, like I was the one that was broken. And if there is an agent, it would indicate, if there is the ergative case, it would indicate I was the agent. So next, verbs like burn and dry, etc., shown in 9 to 14, shown here, which Perlmutter categorizes under semantically patient category, clearly hosts semantically different subjects without the ergative marker. It is the subject who is undergoing the burning and the drying. So with the ergative marker, it is clearly the agent initiating the act. So this verb should have dual entries, as their theta role changes with and without the ergative case marker. And also this conforming to the uniformity of theta assignment hypothesis, which also sort of states that, the theta roles or thematic roles are assigned at a particular position, in the sense like in a subject position, you can only have a agent theta role, and in the object position, you can only have a team theta role. So the remaining verbs like fall, skid, etc., that were listed in the unergatives can also occur with or without the ergative case marker. However, in both the cases, it is the theme or the theme or the experiencer undergoing the falling. As in here, in example 16, even though there is an ergative case marker, which would entail some kind of volition, it is the person who is undergoing that experience, as opposed to the other examples that we saw earlier, where, without the ergative marker, I am the patient, the person undergoing the activity is the patient, and with the ergative marker, the patient undergoing is the agent. So in that sense, this kind of verb and the other verbs that I showed earlier has some sort of distinction. So the other list of verbs that he had included in the unergatives, which are labeled as incohetives, host the highest number of verbs, which mostly take inanimate subjects and occur without the ergative case marker. So this group of anacustic verbs arrive, come, go, etc., which Perlmutter classified as other, can take animate subjects and can take ergative under certain constructions. So for instance, if I say, for the verb arrive or reached, like an unaccusative verb, I can still have an adverb kind of a word in that and can have the ergative case marker. Or I can have in 18, you can see like, children grows fast. So there again, I can have the ergative case marker in this kind of unaccusative verb constructions. So there is clearly animate and an unanimate divide. Majority of the inanimate can't take an ergative case as expected, but with a few exceptions, like the following. You can see, like, the verb. So we have sort of seen that animates would usually take be it in unergatives or unaccusatives. Mostly animates would take an ergative case marker, whereas inanimate wouldn't take an ergative case marker. But there are certain exceptions, like this examples, like examples 19 to 23, where you see the cups broke, or clay cups will break easily. The lights flickered, the bomb exploded. So you see, like, this kind of verbs, in this kind of constructions, you can see an ergative case, which is a little rather unusual, right? Because according to it would also go according to Moran's generalization, which states that derived subjects cannot be marked ergative. So basically, like, Moran's generalization states that no ergative case on a non-thematic subject, right? So basically, by non-thematic, it is intended to mean that those subjects which are seen as derived in the generative literature, so that is those that are underlying theme or patient arguments.
Adam, I'm sorry that I have to interrupt, but the 20 minutes are over. You should be finishing.
All right. Yeah, but basically what happens is, like, on a closer examination, you see like this ergative case on the appearing on this inanimates, are actually indicative of focus and not of agent or volition. So, so should I just go to the observation, the findings?
Yes, I guess.
Okay.
And we can always come back during the Q&A to see more
Great, great.
examples if you would like to discuss some more.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll just quickly talk a little bit about this. So usually, like, I have applied some sort of diagnostic test that in the literature to capture the syntactic semantic distinction between the unergatives and the unaccusatives in Mongsen. So you would see, like, auxiliary selections, which Buzio had also used, and these are generally used for languages, Romans and Germanic languages, auxiliary selection, or like the knee cliticization for Italian and all that. But that cannot really be applied for Mongsen because Mongsen do not really have a be and have distinction. And also like this impersonal passives. So Mongsen also does not again have a passive kind of a construction. But diagnostic tests like a resultative phrase can be applied to see that, actually in Mongsen, like it is expected, only the unaccusatives can form the resultative constructions. And also, like, telic and atelic distinction, where you can see that in Mongsen, usually the unergatives would allow allow a atelic construction, whereas an unaccusative wouldn't. And then you also have so other test is something like the adjectival modification, which, like the ability of the intransitive verbs to allow for a cognate object, or to allow an implicit cognate object. So as you can see, it can sort of host a, so it also sort of it's like it sort of functions like a transitive in that sense, unergatives, sorry. So yeah, these are the diagnostic tests that which are language specific and not necessarily valid across all languages. However, the resultative phrases, the telic and the atelic distinction, and the adjectival modification tests, we can conclude that there are syntactic and semantic differences in the way unergatives and unaccusative subjects are treated in Mongsen. And in many other ergative languages like Hindi, Urdu, etc., etc., you can see that only the unergatives allow for ergative, and an unaccusative would only take an absolutive. So these are the main findings. So it has been often observed that the unergative unaccusative distinction is not always clear cut, and in fact, some verbs may have a dual status, like the verbs like break and burn and all that we have seen earlier. So Mongsen intransitives do not wholly conform to the categories that are classified by Perlmutter, but rather there is an animate and an inanimate divide when it comes to ergative case in the intransitives. And also the unergatives and the unaccusatives, the syntactic and the semantic difference applies to Mongsen, as can be observed by the unergatives' ability to host cognate objects, and also via the resultative phrase and atelic distinction. Also, the subject of the unaccusative verbs, which takes ergative case on a closer examination, appears to be focus marker and not related to agentivity. Lastly, intransitive subjects can be marked ergative depending on the information structure, which is the focus and the volition, and when there is volition involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Adu. We are now ready to accept questions.
I had a quick question. I have to run to the other room, but I thought I would ask a quick question before.
Yeah.
Thank you for your paper. I was wondering, just even going to trying to understand the analysis of this language as ergative. There has been a grammar written by Alec Coop, right?
Cool.
On
yeah,
and
yes.
You would notice there that he avoids calling this an ergative specifically because the system doesn't really, it works more like what you had said at the end, that it was more of a differential marking or focus marking of some sort. So would that help explain why sometimes you're getting these odd patterns?
So I've also thought a lot around this question, like, this agentivity and ergativity. And for me, like, I see agentivity more as a thematic role or a theta role associated. So ergative markers in Mungsan, I've noticed that are not necessarily agents, right? Not always
Yeah.
agents.
Yeah.
So that's one reason why I don't want to sort of stick to the word agentivity, because I mean, there are also like a lot of functions. So so that's one
Yeah.
reason.
I mean, I think it's great to look at detail in those different verb classes and yeah, and then just thinking, well, if this is not an ergative, if it's really information structure marker, then what answers do I get about the distribution? So it's a good study, good way to go forward. I also was before I leave, I was wondering about also the data, because it's so hard to get like those meanings. They're very nuanced, right? Because it's there are meanings of surprise or meanings of unexpectedness or things of that sort. So was it possible to get any kind of conversational information from, have native speakers talked about how they use these markers in conversation?
As in, like, you mean the ergative, the case markers?
Mm-hmm. Or was it possible to collect or look at any kind of connected text to see how these distributed?
Connected text, as in, like, there are hardly any text on Mungsan, because like I said in the beginning, I mean, it's not used in any formal domains, or it's not taught in schools. So there is basically no written literature on Mungsan. So it's more of like a oral language in that sense. And I think there are just very few works done on Mungsan, and Coop's grammar being, like, I think sort of like the Bible for Mungsan, like,
Okay,
another thing is, because I speak the language, I sort of like I mean, intuitively sort of try to assess the data, and also like sort of always cross check with the other native speakers.
yeah. That's great. That's great. Yeah. Okay. I hope to talk to you more.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Shabana.
Thank you.
Other questions? We have some more time because we don't have a talk right away again. So would you like to spend some time and go over some of your examples? We
Miss
don't have,
sorry, Miss
yes.
Montgomery. So I had, there was actually a comment earlier in the chat asking if your slides would be available, if you would like to distribute them to our guests. I do have the copy that you sent us, but I didn't know if that was okay to distribute.
Yeah, I mean, if there are people who wants it, then I can send it across.
Perfect. Perfect. Would you prefer it if we sent it, or would you like to put your email in the chat?
I mean, I can send it over to you, probably maybe a little later.
Okay, this is fine too.
If that's fine,
Absolutely.
I can do it once, so, like, there are no mistakes. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Oh,
thank you.
Yeah, actually, I didn't check the chats. Yeah.
Other questions?
Yes. Hello.
Please.
Yeah, actually, so I have some small questions as you can see in the slides. I think it would be some numbers 5 or 6 of your examples.
Examples?
Example number 5 or 6 or something.
You mean Mungsan examples?
Yes, that's right. That's right.
I don't know. Can you tell me the kind of example?
Yeah. Actually, it's the next slide. I think it's next slide.
Yeah, this one?
Yes, this one. Yeah. So, is it possible to analyze that the number 5, as in number 5, the ni is a kind of absolute case or something?
You mean the n marker?
No, number 5. Number 5. So ni.
Ni is I, which is the first person singular.
Yeah. But so absolutive case can be unmarked, right?
Yeah, absolutive is unmarked. Yeah.
Okay. So is it possible to think that it is how to say, so the subject is omitted in the number 5, example number 5? Is it okay?
As in,
So ni can be so can ni be an object of,
if I can drop that.
Yeah. No. Actually, so the subject of ku in the number 5
Yes.
is omitted, and ni can be object of the number 5. Is that okay? Is that not
I don't really get the question. Do you mean like if I can have an object in this?
No. You can we add the subject to another subject to number 5? In ku, is it also
Instead
possible
of ni, can I? Yeah, instead of ni, I can have some other subject.
Yeah. Actually, yeah.
But so maintain ni in the structure, but keep ni in the structure.
By keeping ni in the structure.
Can we say, for example, somebody else like she or he knocked me? And this is how we got the interpretation.
So for instance, like pa khu would be like he or she knocked. So yeah, the subject would always be the patient, like the experiencer or the undergoer, without the ergative case.
So this maybe look then as a passive construction then?
Yeah, but we don't really have like any overt marker on the verb to sort of determine that, you know, it is some sort of a passive construction. So for instance, if you can see this example 9 and 10, I think it's very similar to the previous example, right? Ni room, like I burned. So here again, I am the patient, I am the undergoer. Now, if I have the ergative case, I would be the agent here again.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how to say so. So can it be can Monsen language also have some inanimate subject or something?
Inanimate subjects, yeah. So like I said, you know, if it's usually inanimate subjects, they wouldn't have the ergative marker.
So basically, this alternation will not be seen with inanimate subjects. Something like coffee got burned, right? Or the rice got burned, right?
Yeah, I've given some examples. Yes, exactly, yeah. So there are only a few exceptions where you see, like the cup broke, for instance. But there again, the ergative actually sort of gives a focus reading and not necessarily a agentive reading there.
For inanimates or both animates and inanimates?
For inanimates.
For inanimates.
Okay. Yeah, generally, yes. And sometimes in animates also. But mostly in inanimates, it is there is no ergative marker. If there is ergative marker, it does not imply any agentive reading, but more like a focus reading.
Thank you.
Okay, Sakundala, can you come to your example number 19?
19, okay.
Yeah, that cup broke one. I think so.
Yes, this one, yeah.
Yeah, so the 20, 21, 20, 23, they're all marking with ergative na and except 19. And if I'm not mistaken, if you can go to
19,
20. Yeah.
19, that's just a default example that I've shown. Like, you know, in the default case, usually like intransitives wouldn't have a ergative case in the default scenario. Yeah.
Okay.
So
I think the same may be of the. Can you go to 26 again once?
Example 26.
Yeah.
1 second. Nee, do I have 26?
I think so. There was.
Yeah, I do. This one? The result
Yeah.
it is? Okay.
Yeah, the mid burn one also. So
Oh,
the
yeah.
26, what I have observed is 19 and 26. Can give you some light on this sir? Sir, instead of na, you are marking with sir here, like mid burn, black.
Yeah, like I said, like here again, I can also have the na. It's optional here actually. I can also have the na, but here if
Okay.
I na, it would give more of a focused reading and not necessarily like an agentive reading. And the 7, even with the 27.
Okay, so if you replace
So
with na
it's just
also, yeah, it's optional thing only.
yeah. So sir is it's even that is sort of optional actually.
Okay. Okay, thank you.